Welcome back, everybody, to the Relai YouTube channel. And today we are speaking to a very special guest. It's Yves from the Bitcoin Initiative over here in Switzerland. Yves, how has your day been so far?
It's fantastic. It's sunny. People are signing signature sheets. I'm talking with you. You know what? And I have coffee. What else can I ask for?
It's like the what is it? Stack sats on balls and drink coffee or something like this. One of these anecdotes.
Exactly. And also I'm trying to be humble, so it's perfect.
That's great.
Trying.
To get started, I took a closer look at, before hitting record, we talked about this off camera a bit, about the quote unquote Bitcoin Initiative, as we would call this the name of the entire thing. But there are 4 keywords for me specifically in the description and in your entire layout there, which is solid, stable, sovereign, and responsible. Can you maybe give a breakdown for the viewers who have no idea what it is and how it works in Switzerland, why you guys focused on these keywords?
Okay, so 1 question, 2-hour answer. No problem.
We got time.
So the way it works is to oversimplify, and also until we started preparing the initiative, I was not a SNB, Swiss National Bank expert. So I'm also learning as it goes. The way it works is like this. The Swiss franc is very strong, and it's kind of a good thing for Swiss people who travel overseas, but it's not very good for international commerce and export. And the Swiss National Bank has a mandate to keep the Swiss franc stable and the Swiss economy stable and prices stable. But at the same time, they want that we are not in a little bubble or a little island where we cannot export and we cannot do commerce. So they have this trick mandate where they are trying to keep us quote unquote rich, but at the same time not so rich that we get isolated. So as they are dealing with issuing and creating Swiss franc and managing the Swiss franc that everybody uses, which works kind of the same way everywhere, you know, like you have loans from banks and that's how you create the money and everything. They had to, or they decided to abandon the gold standards in the year 2000. And it was the last central bank, the last country to abandon the gold standard. And between brackets, just as a side note, it's interesting when people say, well, we're not going to go back to the gold standard. Well, Switzerland was under the gold standard until 1999, and we were pretty successful with it. So it's not the gold standard that is the problem. And even with, you know, like the US, that is the world reserve currency, and, you know, printing into oblivion, and the US debt and the European debt and whatever you want. Switzerland was on a gold standard, of course, not pegged one-on-one, obviously, like they have some kind of flexibility. But the idea is one day they decided we're not going to be on gold. So they started selling some gold, blah, blah, blah. This is a side story. It's interesting to follow it, but it's not really the topic. But they have to have a system, a mechanism in place that makes it that they don't print like crazy. They don't devalue the Swiss franc so that, you know, we have hyperinflation and everything. And at the same time, as they're doing that, they don't want to become like the US that does, you know, like lending, debt. So they are issuing Swiss francs, but at the same time, they compensate by investing what the reserve, the accumulation of wealth that they have into other assets. And one way to make the Swiss franc become less strong, but at the same time the economy is still strong, it's their magic thing, is that they invest in euro and US dollar debt and euro denominated assets like a stock or whatever, and US dollar denominated asset like stock. So a lot of people don't know, but in the reserves of the Swiss National Bank. There is a lot of NASDAQ shares. There is MicroStrategy, there is Tesla. They have like millions of shares of, whatever, Apple, Microsoft. There is a big debate about the fact that they have a lot of shares from fossil fuel companies like, Chevron, ExxonMobil, whatever, which of course implies that the Swiss National Bank supports their activities. It's a big debate. Every year people are fighting about it, and they're saying, but we can't just sell everything, because they also don't want to spook the markets. They need to have as big as possible the most diversified portfolio. But in a way, they invest in, as I said, MicroStrategy, but they also invest in, let's say, Marathon, Hut 8, a bunch of Bitcoin miners that are traded in the US. So all those companies, they have Bitcoin in their treasuries, so especially MicroStrategy, of course. So indirectly, the Swiss National Bank owns Bitcoin, about, I forgot, like 1,000 Bitcoin or something. Of course, not directly, but they are supporting a lot of things indirectly. They are owning a lot of things indirectly. Anyway, going with all this, we realize that we at the committee and the people who support us, we realize that there is a problem with this, which is that the Swiss National Bank has in its treasury the majority of the assets are in foreign currency denomination, mostly the euro and the dollar, which means that it puts the Swiss economy in a position where our stability and the stability of the Swiss franc and the stability of prices and the stability of our inflation is dependent and interconnected with monetary policies of foreign countries and the economy in general of foreign countries and the regulations in general of foreign countries. So we're kind of losing our neutrality and our sovereignty, because if the US, let's say, is printing a lot of dollars like they did after COVID, I forgot how much, but every Bitcoiners know that. But like the majority of the US dollars in circulation today have been printed after the COVID crisis. The debasement of the dollar has an impact on the reserves that we have. And this is why in 2022, the S&B posted their all-time record losses of 132 billion Swiss francs.
Which running a central bank like a hedge fund is probably not a good idea.
It's tricky because when everything goes well, everything goes well. But when everything goes wrong, you have less flexibility. And so this year they announced that they had record earnings, and that of course it will be good because they will be able to give money indirectly to the population, but to the canton and the confederation and everything. But this year they're saying record earnings and profits of 80 billion. But in 2022, it was 132 billion that was in loss. But at the time, it was very big. But then now they say, yeah, but it was just, it's just accounting. It's just that what we had had less value. But today, it's exactly the same thing.
I'm going to say this next time on my tax report.
Exactly. It's not really a loss. We still have the same shares, except they have less value. And today, it's the opposite. It's not really a profit. It's just that they have a lot of, treasury bonds and stocks and all kinds of assets like this that have more value. But this is where it's very, very tricky, because first, it's not a hedge fund. Also, it's a huge investor. We're talking, hundreds of billions of Swiss francs invested. So what we're saying is, okay, let's step back and look at the context and the big picture. There is also physical gold that we own. in our safes in Switzerland and also in foreign central bank safe, I think in Canada and somewhere. So there is gold. Gold is, I forgot, I think something like 5% of the reserves. But
I think it's like
anyway,
1,000, little bit more than 1,000 tons, something like that in total.
yeah, but I'm not sure. I don't know the value of gold to make that,
Rough
calculation.
at the current gold price, take the zero, that's like 5.5%, let's say.
Okay, so 5.5% is not nothing. It's not a lot, but if I cut 5% of your body, you're not going to be very happy. It's something's missing. So 5% is still quite a lot. But it also allows the S&B sometimes when the stock is going down, I mean the stock market in general, or maybe the dollar and the exchange rate is not really good. The fact of having gold gives a hedge because it's a neutral type of asset. It doesn't belong, and Bitcoiners know that it doesn't belong to a government. It doesn't belong to a company. It's international. And if you look at gold reserves in central banks since 10 years ago, something like that, it was going down, down, down. And then 10 years ago, it started going up, up, up. And now it's at the highest level that it hasn't been since the 80s. So China is buying gold. India is bringing back the gold that they had hosted somewhere else. Eastern European countries are buying gold. So the idea with gold is that, in a way, it's not so much that you want to have a shiny piece of metal in your vault. Is you want something that has a value for other people, so that if you had to use it and you had to balance some kind of exchange, you actually have something that gives you the flexibility to do it. Whereas if you have a lot of NASDAQ shares, you will be able to probably sell them on the stock market in the US from Monday to Friday from 9 to 5. And if you sell all of it, the market will collapse and. But it's much more, it's much less flexible. It's much more constrained. So what we thought was we look at gold and we're saying this is a good thing. It's good to have some kind of diversification with something that is neutral. And then we looked at the constitution, the Swiss constitution, and in the Swiss constitution, there is this article 99, paragraph 3, that says that the Swiss National Bank has to have reserve. This is, the constitution mandates them to have reserves, and that some of those reserves have to be in gold. But it doesn't say how much. It doesn't say a proportion. It doesn't say an amount. And in 2014, I think, there was actually a vote in Switzerland where people said, do we want to have a mandate of 20% of the reserves in gold, 20% minimum? It was a popular initiative. It went to the vote and the Swiss people said no. So we know that there is I don't know how to say, a trust from the Swiss people that the S&B does their job properly. There is also a trust that there are some, how do you call that, barrier or guardrails, so that the S&B doesn't do whatever they want and then, maybe they get crazy. There is also a trust that in the constitution it says you have to have some gold, and that there is a trust again that the S&B will know that some gold doesn't mean like having 5 grams or like, one necklace. And of course, it makes more sense that they know what they're doing and maybe they have more or less, but 5% is still like consequential. So we thought, why don't we include Bitcoin the same way? But of course, it doesn't mean it's going to be the same amount of gold, then gold. It doesn't mean that it's, all the Swiss franc will be backed by Bitcoin, like one-on-one. We're not going to a Bitcoin standard. Maybe if they want to, but that's not what we're, proposing. We're not saying Bitcoin has to become legal tender.
Mm-hmm.
We're not saying citizens, as in humans, will have to buy Bitcoin. That's not what we're saying at all. In terms of regulations, we're not saying, it needs to be, more better regulated, because in Switzerland it's fantastic. Fiscally, it's fantastic. The regulations like FINMA and everything, and the Federal Council, they studied it since 2014. We didn't say banks need to have better access, because we have so many banks, including banks that belong to the cantons, and including PostFinance that belongs to the confederation, like 100% belongs to the state. PostFinance, for those who don't know, is the bank of the post office. All those banks, they do services, custody, everything of Bitcoin. So we know that the situation, the way we are in Switzerland, is pretty good. It's kind of, it might be one of the best in the world, at many levels. So we're not trying to change that. But what we're saying is there is an issue with Bitcoin, which is Bitcoiners want to use Bitcoin because they believe in the fact that it's good to have something neutral and independent for their savings. And of course, in everyday life, most people, even Bitcoiners, they use Swiss franc.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in Switzerland, of course, because, your salary, your rent, your groceries, you pay in Swiss franc. So we use one tool, but we start saving in another tool. And what we're saying is the SNB is producing one of the tool, but it's saving in maybe the most dangerous asset, the one that is the least neutral. And at the same time, they're putting like half of their eggs in that basket. And this is where the initiative comes. We're not saying the SNB needs to do everything we say 100% from A to Z. What we're saying is it's irresponsible of them with the mandate that they have. It's hypocritical and irresponsible and strange that they have zero. And what we're saying, it should be not zero. But then after that, that's it. We step back and we say, after that, you do whatever you do, because you do it properly. Every day, living in Switzerland is kind of like paradise on many levels, especially financially. We're very safe. Everything is stable. And of course, it's, like, maybe I exaggerate when I say paradise, but I look in other countries and I'm saying, okay, Switzerland is maybe the most paradise-like places, or one of the most in the world. So we don't want to tell the SNB to change everything. We're just saying one thing you have to change is that now it's zero, and we're saying it should be not zero. And then after that, it can be 1 franc worth of Bitcoin. It can be 1 Satoshi. It can be the same amount as gold. It can be the same amount as MicroStrategy. Whatever you have in MicroStrategy shares, you should have the same amount in Bitcoin. It can be whatever. But it should be not zero. And this is where, it's like the domino effect. The moment that it's not zero, they have to think about it. Zero is very easy. Zero is zero. Do you have to do anything? No, you just say no. The moment you say, okay, it's not zero, then someone needs to sit at a table and start making a survey or a study about what is the proper number. And then someone will have to sit down and start discussing about what is the best way to custody it. We have a lot of banks who could be taking care of it for us. Do they want to do it completely internally? Do they want to delegate to some Swiss bank? Do they want to delegate to whatever? Someone needs to make those decisions. So the idea is also to open the gate to all those decisions and all those studies and all this thinking that the SNB will have to have the moment that they start thinking about it. And the moment they start thinking about it, that means maybe they have to start hiring people. So it becomes interesting for people to study and become expert in those fields, because suddenly it's not only private banks who will be hiring you. It might also be that you can work for the central bank and the government and everything.
it kind of fits, that domino effect fits, especially with the words I mentioned previously, into the whole state that Switzerland is in as well, because we will get into how the initiative works in a second. But for viewers
Yes.
outside of Switzerland, I think those 20 minutes were very important to understand. The SNB and the initiative especially is not forcing people to buy, or forcing the SNB at this point to buy as much Bitcoin as a reserve or whatever. As you said, one Satoshi is enough, but what we're trying to do is to use neutral money and actually safeguard also the neutrality of Switzerland through such initiatives. And how amazing would it be if, you get signatures and the law would then be proposed and it would be passed to have a change in the Swiss constitution and to mention Bitcoin. I think looking at just that possibility, that is also a huge impact it can have on other nation states, or as we want, obviously, on other people to realize, maybe this Bitcoin
Yes.
thing, I should also take a second look.
So I'll sidestep for a second, but
Mm-hmm.
at the moment there is a group of people. I think they're affiliated or working together with the Pirate Party, who are making votes at the cantonal level for digital identity integrity. I forgot how it's
Mm-hmm.
exactly called. But what is interesting is if you think about how long the internet has been around, of course, we're not talking about the 60s, right? But,
Mm-hmm.
like the web and the 90s and people starting having internet at home and everything. So, in the last 30 years or 20 years, we went from maybe some people have an email address to you and I can make that recording for free, using whatever device we have. We can call internationally. We can work from home. Everybody's is downloading, streaming from YouTube, Netflix, whatever. So the world has changed a lot, right? And 20 years later, people are starting to say, look, there is an actual thing that people have not been talking about, which is that we have a certain certain rights and also obligations in real life, and they should apply similarly to the digital world. But it took 20 years that people now are starting to say we need to start changing the law. In the US, even now, they're still discussing about net neutrality. Net neutrality would be, you're accessing the net from your provider, let's say Swisscom or, whatever. So you're accessing your content. Is it okay that they are giving you more bandwidth to access, Meta companies than Google companies, or the opposite? So, for example, you go to Instagram and it's lagging and it's not very efficient and it doesn't work, or maybe they charge you more. They can say when you go to Meta things, it's not part of your monthly fee. But when you go to YouTube, Google Maps and everything, it's part of your monthly fee.
Which is crazy because the internet was made to have an open network,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. So what is interesting is that 20 years later, people are debating this, and there is no real 100% answer, because if they're working like a business and you have a capitalistic mindset, and maybe you're saying there should be competition, then of course you want to have some kind of competition that if Swisscom says you pay more if you want to access Instagram, maybe there is the competition that will come and say no, with us it's all inclusive, and therefore you might have a good balance. But at the same time, you're saying it should be forced to be neutral so that everybody is on the same level. But who forces it? Is it the government? So now the internet needs to be protected by the government. What happens if you are in a government who wants to censor the internet, and so on and so forth? So what we're saying is there is this thing with Bitcoin. We don't have to wait 20 years for the Swiss National Bank, which is maybe the most neutral and the best managed central bank in the world, to understand it, harness it, embrace it, and at the same time also lead the way and show the way to other countries. Because we're always talking about the European Union and the US, but today there is, let's say, El Salvador, who has Bitcoin as legal tender, and they have Bitcoin in their national treasury, and so on and so forth. But if you go and speak to anybody, they will say, "Yeah, but it's a tiny country. They don't really exist." There was a French politician who said they're not even a sovereign country. Yeah, they are. They are at the United Nations, and your country recognizes them. They are completely sovereign. They're completely proper. They're a little country. But the thing is, it's easy to dismiss if it's El Salvador. It's easy to dismiss when Bhutan is mining Bitcoin, or today it's Ethiopia, who is I forgot, like 5% or 3%. I forgot the number, but it's pretty big. Ethiopia is mining, and it's growing. But it's easy to dismiss because we are in that Western mindset that white people are superior, and rich people are superior, and everything else is tiny and insignificant. What we're also trying to do with Switzerland is to say, look, you can be a small country and still be rich and powerful. And you can be a small country and show the way to other small countries who will now look at you and say, if it's good enough for Switzerland, it's good enough for us. And this is also what we want to be doing. We want that this debate, even if it doesn't go all the way to a positive vote, because at the end, and this is another thing, but at the end, what really matters is that the SNB, buys Bitcoin and understands Bitcoin, and starts transitioning towards having a better grasp and understanding of Bitcoin. But if it's not in the Constitution, in reality, it doesn't really matter. Like it's a mean for an end, but in reality, what we want is the SNB to make the step. But the fact that we have that debate, and that debate is extremely serious, because we're not saying, do this, do that on Twitter. We're saying we are going to propose to the Swiss people, and we still have to address this and explain how a popular initiative works. But we are actually saying to the people in Switzerland, you might vote so that the Swiss constitution will be changed. It's huge. It's a really serious thing, and we're not doing it lightly. So this is also something that another country, a smaller country outside somewhere, would be looking at and saying, they're not playing around, they're not joking. And that's the beauty of all this. It's bottom up. It's the people who are proposing to the people to change the constitution that the politicians and the government will have no say about.
Yeah, and I think this is a lot of the stuff people outside of Switzerland don't understand, because we are unique in Europe and across the world with a few exemptions. I recently found out that California actually has a very similar quote-unquote constitution to Switzerland. They also have a lot of the direct democracy aspects to it. But to get us two people and the Swiss citizens actually voting on the matter, how do you guys get it done? How does the popular initiative come together, and how much time do you also have?
Okay, so the way it works is you need to do some paperwork and some back and forth, so that you are not doing something that is, frivolous and illegal and anti-constitutional. So there is a bit of admin stuff. But technically, the idea is you need to propose to the population a change of an amendment, a modification. Sometimes you can add something, sometimes you can remove something, and sometimes you can create something completely new in the constitution. So usually you would be working with constitutional lawyers, because you want to make something that will not be against something else in the constitution, and then there is like conflict and whatever. For us, it was easy because we're just adding 3 words. We're just adding N in Bitcoin. That's it. So the sentence is not even changed. There is nothing. Sometimes you need to add also how it will be implemented, because if you say from now on there is something, so you also have to put in place inside the constitution the way it will be, the transition will happen, for example. But the idea is, you submit a piece of the article or articles that you want to change, and you're saying, this is how we want that it's going to be in the constitution. So you take the article, you make your modification, and you propose that. At some stage, you need to have a committee that is a minimum of 7 people and a maximum of 27, so that you don't have like a group of two guys, two bros who are just having fun. You still need to have people who are legally committed to it, because once the process starts, you cannot change your committee. You cannot add people, you cannot remove people. And of course, everybody needs to be Swiss citizen who can vote, and so on and so forth. And then you propose that. There is, as I said, some back and forth, because, for example, we have 3 languages in Switzerland. So if your text is not the same in German and in French, they will say, look, you're saying you want to change the constitution, but in German it says, more cows, and in French it says less cows. It doesn't work. So you have to.
Did you also have to translate to Rätoroman, like the 4th hidden language in Switzerland?
No, it's actually 3. It's only the 3 languages, okay. The 3 main languages, which is disrespectful, but that's another story. So the idea is, of course, we go back and forth. We make everything perfectly clear and clean. Then you create the template of the sheet that you will be using for people to sign, because also you don't want that, for example, people would see something and think that they signed for something, but in reality they signed something else. Because you could be tricking people in the street or whatever. There is like all these things. Once this is accepted, and of course they do some check, it takes a little bit of time, but and that's a good thing. There are a lot of popular initiatives, so the services who are taking care of it are very, very responsive. They're not against us, they're actually supporting us. Any question they answer, any help we need they provide. They gave us actually a printed guide on how to prepare all this, which if you call and you say, hello, I want to prepare one, they send it to you, and it's a very, 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 very positive process. Once you have all this, then it's published in the official Gazette of the Confederation, and that day forward, that day onward, you have 18 months to gather 100,000 signatures of Swiss citizens, Swiss voters, because you could be like, I don't know, people who are in prison or whatever. So Swiss people who can vote, you have to get 100,000 signatures of Swiss citizens, adult, on those sheets. And then those sheets have to be paper. They need to be printed. The signature needs to be handwritten. So you cannot do anything online. You can download the signature sheet from online, because anybody can print at home. It doesn't matter, as long as you're using the official template. Then everything needs to be handwritten. So everybody needs to put their name, address, date of birth, the commune where they vote. I'll explain to you why. Because of course you vote in your own community, and then the signature, the manual signature, handwritten. Then they send it back to us, and then we send it to the commune, who will be double checking that those people are actually registered voters in that particular place. And then they stamp the paper, and then they send it back to us. So it's a very long, ongoing process like this, and some people are complaining. They're saying, oh, it's so long, it's so, tedious and time consuming. Why don't you put everything online? Well, think about it. Can you do that in your in your own country? Most people cannot propose to change the constitution like, spontaneously from grassroots movement. So of course it's the old-fashioned way. Of course it's everything handwritten. It's a lot of papers. But the idea is, once we have all this and we have, hopefully more than 100,000 signatures, because you have to also account for, maybe there will be, some sheets that will be invalidated, and maybe some, frivolous fake names like Donald Duck or whatever. So you need to have more than 100 signatures so that you don't get short, within 18 months. So we started on the 31st of December. So we have until mid-June 2026. Then you take all these papers and you bring to Bern, to the capital. And then I forgot if it's first the parliament or whoever, they will examine it. They will check to know what kind of opinion they want to give, because they also have to tell the people what the government thinks. So they need to study it. Part of that study, they might also show if they want to propose a counter proposal. Let's say, we're saying this and they're saying it's good, but it might be like too specific, for example, or it might be too ambitious. So, we propose something that is similar, that maybe we can find a good common ground, that you would be satisfied, we would be satisfied, and the people would be satisfied. And then after that, there is a process. I mean, the whole thing like this, the whole process is around 3.5 years. Added to the 18 months, the original 18 months. So it's like 5 years. And then it goes to the vote, and then people can vote. So this is also why we're not, at the moment, we have this it's very unique. We're in a position where, from the fact that we don't need to focus on the vote so much as a first step, depending on the initiatives, some initiatives, they really want to educate people at the same time, so that when they reach the voting time, they will have made enough noise that people will be voting for their project. So there is a lot of marketing campaign, and you have leaflets in your mailbox, and you have, like, for 5 years you have a lot of discussion. What we are lucky about is that there is a lot of Bitcoiners and Bitcoin enthusiasts in Switzerland. According to University of Basel, it's like 11%. Of Switzerland, of Swiss people. According to AGFI, is a little bit more than 10%, but the numbers are around there. And obviously, you know more than me. Like, you have all the secrets from Relai, so you know everything. But
I would say we go with these numbers for
okay.
easy measures.
So 10% of Switzerland is convinced or not against Bitcoin. That's a lot. That's a lot of people. So what we have to do is make sure that these people are not lazy. They print, they put in they write it, they put in an envelope, and they send it back to us. If we do that, then the first step is okay. Then we start thinking and planning the second step. But at the same time, the second step, the vote, if it's in 5 years, think about how Bitcoin was 5 years ago compared to where it is today. Like, in 5 years, the landscape will be so different, and people will have learned so much. And if things continue with cycles like this, that means there will be one bull run now, and there will be another bull run in 4 years, in 5 years. So number go up technology will help us convince people to educate themselves. And we're not saying everybody is greedy, but greed is a very good motivator for learning and educating yourself and understanding better. So
yeah, especially if you look outside of the Bitcoin community, the number go
exactly.
up thing is still the main argument. People do the first step of actually buying the first
Exactly.
couple of sets. Yeah.
And then once you start, and this is where it applies to the S&B as well, once you have one sat, suddenly you start asking a lot of questions. And you say, I want to understand better. I want to understand, should I have more? Should I have less? I want to understand, how can I secure it? Because people are saying, those meme things like not your keys, not your coins, and this and that. But what does it really mean? And how can I do it properly? And then you start discovering that, there are some good practices. You start understanding that there are some companies proposing, including in Switzerland, very good services. And this is the moment when we're thinking, between now and in 5 years, there is a very fair chance that we get enough people to vote for us. And again, and this is the same with every votation, we know that the majority of people don't vote. So we also need to have the 50% of the people who do vote. And Bitcoin is a very motivating topic. So I can imagine that when we will tell Bitcoiners, you have to vote, they will actually, fill in their voting sheet and putting it in the mailbox. So this is why we're not too worried, but we're lucky that we can separate our two campaigns, and they don't need to be one campaign. We don't need to focus on no coiners right now. We don't need to start educating the whole population of Switzerland right now. We can really just focus on that first step, which is the 100,000 signatures.
Brilliant. And I mean, if everything works out, as you said, in 5 years, we could see that constitutional change. And I think that
Yes.
leaves it at a very, very high end, at a very good note, Eve, to head towards the end of the recording. But if people now want to find out more, if they're maybe eligible to vote, if they're Swiss, but they live in a different country, or if they have seen it online, where is the best place where they can find out more about the initiative? And of course, about you, if they want to get in touch.
So they don't want to get in touch with me. Nobody wants to get in touch with me. But if they have they have to, you can find me on Twitter. That's probably the easiest. My Twitter handle is Zlok, ZLOK. But you can find me, like, I have a name that is not so common that you wouldn't be able to find me. Just look at the show notes. As far as the initiative, of course, I hope it's going to be in the show notes as well. The website is initiativebtc, all in one word, .ch. And then from there you have the links to Twitter and Telegram group and LinkedIn, whatever you want to interact with us. From the website also, of course, there is like the link that you can just click to download the PDF in French, German, or Italian. You can print it yourself. You can print in black and white. It doesn't matter, even though it's orange originally. You just need to fill it properly. So read the instructions. This is important because otherwise it will be invalid. As I said earlier, the most common error is that people say, I'll put my name and the name of, I don't know, my brother. I'll make him sign. But both of them live in a different commune. And the problem is it's one sheet per commune because, as I said, we have to send it and they need to stamp it back. So if you are, let's say, two people who live in two different communes, it's two different sheets. Don't just fill in one sheet and then you realize that, because it will just be invalid and the signature don't count. But yeah, you can print as much as you want. It's going to be the same price for the stamp if you put one sheet or two sheets or three sheets in your envelope. So go crazy. And then you send it to us. If you can get, your family members and a couple of friends, one Bitcoiner can make, 10 people sign. We know how Bitcoiners can be, really annoying. So this is the time to be annoying with your loved ones. Christmas is over now, so you get your present. Everybody can start hating you again. But yeah, one person can get a 10 signature if you. So that's one thing that we will be doing, of course. throughout the year is going to different meetups so that we can also present to people, answer all the questions in German, in English, in French, in Italian. You can, if you are convinced, you can make your own, presentation, meetup, whatever. You can gather signature from your neighborhood. The idea is we don't want to go and proselytize and try to convince people, because it's a topic that is difficult. And if you go, at the train station and you tell people, please, let me tell you about Bitcoin, you will waste your time. And we don't want people to be like, discouraged by this. However, if you organize with your local meetup or with your colleagues and friends, and you say, hey, this is this thing that I really like, help support me, it's actually a nice way to break the ice. Because suddenly people are saying, oh, you mean Bitcoin, you want to get rich? And you say, no, I don't want to get rich. I want the SNB to get rich. And I want the SNB to make that every Swiss citizen can be, more safe and more sovereign. So it's a nice icebreaker also to Orange Peel people in a more serious way, because now it's actually a proper, political campaign. It's not just, you and your friends saying, let's get rich. So you can print, you can send, you can participate, you can support us, you can come and say hello on Twitter or on Telegram. And then after that, hopefully we have another podcast in 18 months when we say this is, the next step.
Exactly. So make sure everyone who's interested and who's eligible to do the signatures and later on vote to check the show notes below. Yves, thank you very much for your time. It was a fascinating conversation, and I've learned so much about the whole process of how actually the SNB runs and how the initiatives come together. And yeah, let's definitely do a catch up again in 18 months once the second part of the whole campaign starts.
Maybe earlier.
Maybe
because
earlier, exactly.
18 months is the deadline, but maybe we'll be super lucky. And that would be also a very nice narrative to say, look, Bitcoiners, when they care about, themselves and the Bitcoin, they are very vocal. But when they care about, their country and their fellow citizens, they're also very motivated. If we can get that kind of discussion and narrative, and, the media would love that. They would talk about it nonstop, because it would be fantastic if we can get the 100,000 signatures in less than 18 months. So let's hope, let's cross fingers that this can happen.
Perfect. And for anyone, again, check the show notes below. And I look forward to also doing the counterparty interview in German then. So if you want to see that, check out our YouTube channel. And as always, guys, I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video.